Dr. Harris was a man who had saved countless lives in the operating room, yet every night when he returned home, he felt like the most powerless father in the world, because his daughter Lily had never walked in her life, not even once. She had been born with weak legs that could not carry her weight. And despite his years of training, his awards, his reputation as a brilliant surgeon who could fix the most impossible cases, he could do nothing for his own child, and that truth haunted him like a shadow that refused to leave. Every morning, before going to the hospital, he would quietly open the door to Lily's room, watching her struggle to sit up in her wheelchair, her small hands clinging to the sides as though she feared the chair might roll away, her eyes calm yet filled with something deeper than sadness, something like silent acceptance, which broke him even more because he wished she would cry, shout, or blame him, but she never did. She only smiled, as though she did not want her father to feel guilty, and that smile stabbed his heart every single day. He remembered the first time he had held her as a newborn, how he had promised to give her the best life, and yet years later he could only watch her from the doorway, unable to keep the one promise she needed the most, to walk beside her, to see her run freely like other children. His wife had passed away when Lily was very young, leaving him alone to play both roles, and while he worked endless hours at the hospital, he always rushed home to her, carrying small gifts, books, or flowers, anything that could distract her from noticing what she could not do. But nothing ever erased the truth, because when he drove her to school, she always stared out the window at the children running across the playground, her face pressed against the glass, her breath leaving faint marks as she whispered under her breath words he could barely hear. "I wish I could do that," and every time he heard it, he gripped the steering wheel so hard that his knuckles turned white, forcing himself not to cry in front of her, because fathers were supposed to be strong, but deep inside he was breaking. Doctors from all over the world had examined her, offering theories, treatments, even surgeries. But one by one, they admitted defeat, saying there was no medical solution for her condition. And though Dr. Harris knew they were right, he refused to stop hoping, so he read books late into the night, searched medical journals, tried experimental therapies, but nothing worked. And slowly the hope he had clung to began to fade like smoke in the air. Yet even in his despair, Lily never complained, never blamed him, never shed tears in front of him. Instead, she would laugh at his tired jokes, ask about his surgeries, and sometimes hold his hand quietly while watching television. And in those moments he wondered who was stronger, the father who could save strangers, or the little girl who lived every day in a chair without bitterness. Still, the pain followed him everywhere, to the hospital, to the park, even in his dreams, where he often saw her running toward him, her arms stretched wide, her hair flying in the wind, only to wake up with the sound of her wheelchair squeaking down the hallway, reminding him that his dream was only a cruel trick. His colleagues often praised his brilliance, his patients thanked him with tears of gratitude. But when he stood alone in his office, staring at family photos on his desk, he felt like a fraud. A man who could give hope to the world but not to the one person who needed it most. And so each day became a test of endurance, a battle between the mask of strength he wore outside and the storm of helplessness inside, until one afternoon, when the sky was heavy with gray clouds and the air smelled of rain, he made a decision to take Lily to the park despite his fear of watching her watch others, because he could no longer keep her hidden from the life she longed for. And though he knew it would hurt, he pushed her wheelchair down the gravel path, trying to smile as she clapped her hands at the sight of children running across the grass. And for a brief moment, he thought she was happy. But when he saw the shadow flicker across her face, he realized the truth that no matter how much she pretended, she still dreamed of standing. And in that moment, as thunder rolled in the distance, Dr. Harris felt a weight pressing down on his chest, wondering if fate had been too cruel to his little girl, and if there would ever come a day when she could escape the chair that bound her life like invisible chains. The sky was still heavy with clouds when Dr. Harris wheeled Lily toward the park, the gravel crunching under the tires as they entered a place full of laughter, movement, and energy that did not belong to her world. Yet she smiled bravely, as though she was content just to be there. And he tried to hide the way his heart ached every time a child ran past her without even noticing her chair. Lily's eyes followed every jump, every step, every race. And though her lips curved upward, her fingers pressed tightly against the armrests, a silent sign of the longing she carried, while Dr. Harris stood behind her, pretending to adjust the handles of the chair, just to avoid letting her see the tears forming in his eyes. And it was in that quiet struggle that a small shadow fell across Lily's lap, making her look up in surprise at a boy who stood there barefoot, his shirt faded and torn, his hair messy, and his skin covered in dust from the streets. Yet his smile was bright and warm like sunlight cutting through clouds. And without hesitation, he said, "Hi, I'm Jordan," as though introductions between strangers were the most natural thing in the world. But Dr. Harris stiffened, instantly aware that this was no ordinary child from the park, because Jordan's clothes revealed he was homeless, and his appearance drew curious glances from the other parents who pulled their children closer. Yet Lily looked at him with curiosity rather than fear, and she answered softly, "I'm Lily. her voice carrying the fragile sweetness of someone unused to being approached so directly. And for the first time that day, Dr. Harris saw her face light up with a genuine spark. Not the practiced smile she gave him, but the excitement of a girl who had found someone who treated her like any other child. Jordan plopped down cross-legged on the grass in front of her, ignoring the whispers around them, and began talking about the park, about how he knew every corner of it, the old oak tree that gave the best shade, the swings that creaked at night, and the pond where ducks came in the morning. And Lily listened, with wide eyes as if he were telling her secrets of a world she had never been allowed to explore, while Dr. Harris watched with cautious silence, torn between gratitude for the joy in his daughter's eyes and unease about this stranger who had appeared so suddenly. Jordan asked why Lily sat in a chair, and Dr. Harris opened his mouth to speak, ready to give the same explanation he had repeated countless times, but Lily surprised him by answering herself, saying quietly, "I can't walk. I never could," her words carrying no bitterness, only truth. And Jordan tilted his head, studying her legs with a thoughtful look before smiling again and saying, "That's okay, maybe you just haven't tried the right way." A sentence that made Dr. Harris frown because it carried the innocence of a child, yet the audacity of someone who believed in possibilities that doctors had dismissed long ago. Lily giggled at his words, not in mockery but in wonder, because no one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever suggested she could walk, and she leaned forward eagerly, asking, "What do you mean?" While Jordan shrugged with confidence far beyond his years and said, "Sometimes it's not about medicine, it's about believing. Maybe you just need someone to show you." And though Dr. Harris wanted to dismiss his words as foolish, something in the boy's steady eyes stopped him, a spark of determination that reminded him of the patience he had seen fight against impossible odds. And he felt a strange unease rising within him, as if fate had brought this boy here for a reason. The rain that had been threatening all afternoon finally began to fall, light drops tapping against the leaves above, but Jordan didn't move, and neither did Lily, both of them locked in a conversation that seemed to exist outside the world of running children and cautious parents. And Dr. Harris stood still behind them, his hands gripping the wheelchair handles as a question began to form in his mind. Why had this boy, of all people, chosen to stop and talk to Lily, and why did his words feel heavier than simple kindness? And as the rain thickened, Jordan stood, offering no umbrella, no excuse, just a firm voice that said, "Don't be afraid, Lily, maybe tomorrow I'll show you something," leaving both Lily and her father stunned by the boldness of the promise. For no doctor, no therapist, no surgeon had ever dared to use such certainty. And as Dr. Harris led Lily home under the gray sky, her small hands clutched the wheels tightly, her mind no longer on the children running past or the rain soaking her hair, but on the barefoot boy who had looked her in the eye and spoken words that no one else had dared to say. And in her father's heart, though he wanted to reject the boy's claim as nonsense, a small, dangerous spark of hope flickered where despair had lived for years. The rain had passed by the next morning, leaving the city washed clean and the park damp with the smell of wet earth. And though Dr. Harris considered staying home, Lily insisted on going back, her eyes shining with a restless excitement he had not seen in years, for she wanted to know if Jordan, the boy who had spoken so strangely yet so confidently, would return. And though her father tried to hide it, he too was curious, torn between dismissing the boy as a foolish dreamer and wondering if fate was weaving something he could not yet understand. When they reached the park, children were already laughing on the swings, parents chatting on benches, and there, near the old oak tree, stood Jordan, barefoot again, his clothes still worn but his smile brighter than the sun that broke through the clouds. And the moment Lily saw him, she waved eagerly, her face glowing with joy that no medicine had ever given her. And Dr. Harris, standing behind her, felt a pang in his chest, realizing that this boy, a stranger, had managed to bring something alive in his daughter that he had failed to spark in years. Jordan ran up to them, greeting Lily as though they had known each other forever, and without hesitation, he knelt beside her chair, looking her straight in the eyes with a seriousness that did not match his young age, and he said softly but firmly, "Let me try," and those 3 words fell into the air like a stone into water, creating ripples of shock inside Dr. Harris, who stiffened instantly, his mind racing with disbelief that this boy thought he could do what world-famous doctors had failed to achieve. Yet before he could speak, Lily's small hand tugged his sleeve, and her whisper cut through his resistance. "Please, Dad, let him." And in that moment, Dr. Harris froze, torn between his instincts as a surgeon who trusted science and his role as a father, who saw hope light up in his daughter's eyes. Jordan extended his hand to Lily, not in pity but in trust, as though he believed in her strength more than she believed in herself, and he said, "Don't think about walking like others, just think about moving, even a little," his voice calm, carrying the strange weight of conviction. And Lily looked at her father, her eyes wide and pleading, and though every part of him wanted to stop this, to protect her from disappointment, something held him back, perhaps the memory of all the nights he had prayed for a miracle, and he nodded slowly, his throat dry as he whispered, "Just be careful," though his hands gripped the chair tightly, as though ready to catch her if she fell. Jordan smiled and gently held Lily's arms, guiding her as though he knew what he was doing, and with surprising patience he told her, "Don't look at your legs, look at me, trust me," and she nodded nervously, her lips pressed together, her chest rising and falling quickly as she felt his grip steady her. The park grew quieter as a few curious eyes turned toward them, children pausing mid-play, parents watching with puzzled looks, and even the breeze seemed to slow as Lily shifted in her chair, her hands trembling as she placed them into Jordan's. Dr. Harris's heart pounded in his chest, sweat forming at his temples, though the air was cool, for he had spent years fearing moments like this, moments of false hope that would only break his daughter again. But now, watching her stare at Jordan with the trust she had never given anyone else, he felt something stir inside him, something dangerous yet undeniable. Jordan whispered again, his tone like a secret meant only for her, "Don't be afraid. You don't have to walk today. You only have to try standing. Just for me, just for you." And Lily closed her eyes, took a deep, shaky breath, and began to push against the chair with trembling hands, her legs quivering weakly as though fighting against invisible chains. And Dr. Harris instinctively leaned forward, ready to pull her back, but Jordan shook his head firmly, his own small arm steady as he supported her, and he repeated, "You can do this. I believe in you." Words so simple, yet so powerful that they seemed to wrap around her like strength itself. Lily's lips parted as she gasped, her knees wobbling, her body swaying, but then slowly, impossibly, her weight shifted forward, and for the first time in her life, she rose slightly from the chair, only for a second, but it was enough to freeze Dr. Harris where he stood, his mouth falling open as he realized what he had just witnessed, something no therapy had ever achieved. And though she sank back into the chair almost immediately, her face lit up with astonishment, her eyes brimming with tears, not of pain but of joy, and she whispered, "Dad." I stood, her voice breaking with disbelief. And Dr. Harris felt his knees weaken as emotion surged through him, leaving him unable to speak. Jordan simply smiled, brushing dirt from his hands as if what had just happened was ordinary, and he said, "See, you can do more than you think," before standing up and stepping back, allowing Lily to absorb the moment. While Dr. Harris stared at the boy in silence, his mind a storm of questions. How had this happened? Who was this child? And why did he seem so certain of what Lily could do? But before he could ask anything, Jordan turned toward the sky, as if listening to something only he could hear, then looked back at Lily and said, "Tomorrow, we'll try again." His voice filled with certainty, and with that he ran off, toward the far side of the park, leaving Dr. Harris and Lily sitting under the shade of the oak tree, both stunned, both shaken, and both unable to deny that something extraordinary had just begun. The following afternoon, the park was alive again with laughter and the sound of children's footsteps. Yet for Dr. Harris and Lily, the world felt strangely narrowed to a single question: would Jordan return? And if he did, could he really help her take another step toward what once seemed impossible? And when they arrived beneath the tall oak tree, Lily's hands tightened around the armrests of her chair, her face bright with anticipation, and Dr. Harris, though outwardly calm, felt a restless storm twisting inside him, because he had lived through years of disappointment, years of false hope, and though he wanted to protect his daughter from more pain, he could not erase the memory of the day before, the image of her rising, even for a second, out of the prison of her wheelchair, something he had never believed he would see with his own eyes. Then, just as Lily's shoulders slumped with worry that Jordan might not come, the boy appeared from behind the swings, barefoot again, carrying nothing but the same unshakable smile, and Lily's entire face lit up as she waved to him, her voice breaking with joy as she called his name, while Dr. Harris studied the boy carefully, still unable to understand what force drove him, for he had no tools, no training, nothing but words and belief. Yet somehow, he had given Lily something that the most skilled doctors could not hope. Jordan approached with his usual ease, crouching beside Lily's chair, his eyes steady and filled with warmth, and he said simply, "Are you ready to try again?" As if it were the most natural thing in the world, and Lily nodded with such eagerness that Dr. Harris felt his throat tighten, because he saw in her the hunger of someone who had tasted a freedom she never knew she could have. Jordan glanced at Dr. Harris, not with defiance but with quiet determination, and for a moment their eyes locked, the father full of fear, the boy full of certainty, until finally Dr. Harris gave a small nod, though his heart pounded like a drum in his chest, and Jordan turned back to Lily, his voice calm but firm as he said, "This time, don't think about how long you can stand. Just think about one step, even the smallest one, and trust that I won't let you fall." And his words carried such strength that Lily inhaled deeply, her tiny hands trembling as she reached for his, and slowly he pulled her up, guiding her. "Wait carefully," his eyes never leaving hers, whispering encouragement with every breath. The park, once filled with noise, seemed too quiet as nearby children stopped their games to watch. Parents exchanged whispers, and even the birds in the trees seemed to fall silent. as if the entire world held its breath for this single fragile moment, and Lily's legs quivered under the strain, her knees threatening to buckle. But Jordan's grip held steady, his voice a constant anchor as he said, "Don't look down, don't think about falling. Look at me, only me, and take one small step." And Lily, her lips pressed tightly, her eyes shimmering with tears, leaned forward, her right foot sliding across the grass with a motion so shaky, so fragile, yet so real that Dr. Harris felt the air rush from his lungs. His hand half raised as though to intervene, but frozen in place by AAW because in that moment, his daughter, who had lived her entire life in a chair, had just moved forward on her own. Lily gasped, her voice a trembling whisper, "I did it," and Jordan nodded, his smile broad yet calm, as though he had known all along this would happen, and he said softly, "Yes, you did. Now one more." And though her body shook, every muscle in her legs screamed for rest, Lily pushed forward again, her left foot dragging slightly but landing in front of the right. And Dr. Harris felt tears burn his eyes as he realized she had taken two steps that rewrote the very reality he had lived with for years. And though she collapsed back into the chair moments later, breathless and pale, she was laughing with pure, unfiltered joy, her voice rising above the silence of the park, and the sound pierced through her father's chest like sunlight breaking through endless clouds. Jordan stood, brushing his knees, his expression humble yet glowing with pride, and though Dr. Harris wanted to question him, to demand how this was possible, he could only stand in stunned silence, unable to form words, because what he had witnessed went beyond science, beyond logic. It was a miracle born, not from medicine, but from faith, courage, and the unshakable will of a boy who had nothing yet gave everything. As people around them clapped softly, some even wiping their eyes, Lily looked up at her father with tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "Dad, I can do it. One really can," and he knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms, his own tears falling freely as he whispered back, "Yes, sweetheart, you can," his voice breaking with both disbelief and gratitude. But even as joy filled the air, Dr. Harris could not shake the question that gnawed at him: who exactly was Jordan? And how had he known to give Lily the courage she needed? For there was something about the boy, something beyond his ragged clothes and dusty skin, something deeper in the way he carried himself, as if he had been sent for this very purpose. And while Lily beamed at her new friend, eager for the next attempt, Dr. Harris's heart trembled with both hope and fear, because he sensed that this was only the beginning of something far greater, something that could change their lives forever. The next morning dawned with golden lights spreading across the sky, and for the first time in many years, Dr. Harris felt something stir within him that he had nearly forgotten: hope, fragile yet alive, because his daughter Lily, who had spent her entire life bound to a wheelchair, had taken not one but two trembling steps the day before, and though he had seen it with his own eyes, he still struggled to believe it was real. Yet, when he looked at Lily now, her face glowing with anticipation as she begged him to take her to the park again, he knew it had not been a dream. As they reached the familiar oak tree, his heart beat faster, his eyes searching anxiously until Jordan appeared, barefoot as always, walking across the damp grass with the calm confidence of someone far older than his years. And when Lily saw him, she clapped her hands in delight, her voice carrying across the park as she called his name, while Dr. Harris stood silently behind her chair, still torn between awe and suspicion, unable to understand how this boy, with no medical knowledge, no training, and nothing but a steady gaze, had unlocked something no doctor in the world had been able to achieve. Jordan approached, crouched in front of Lily, and smiled as though he had expected them all along, then said gently, "Are you ready to take another step?" And Lily nodded eagerly, her small hands trembling as she reached for his, while Dr. Harris felt sweat gathering at his brow, fear mixing with hope, as he prepared himself to watch once again. Jordan lifted her carefully, guiding her as she rose, her knees shaking but her determination stronger than before. And with his calm words anchoring her, "Don't look down, keep going, one step at a time," she pushed forward, first with her right leg, then her left. And though each movement was small and clumsy, they were real, and within moments, Lily was standing taller than she ever had, her body swaying, yet her spirit unbroken, and the sight was so overwhelming that tears blurred Dr. Harris's vision, his chest tightening with the weight of emotions he could not put into words. The park had grown quieter again, parents and children gathering nearby, their eyes wide, their breaths held as they watched the girl who had always sat in her chair, now moving across the grass, step after shaky step, guided by a boy who seemed to pour courage into her with every word he spoke. And though Lily stumbled and nearly fell, Jordan's arms caught her, steadying her with a reassuring smile as he whispered, "You're not alone, I've got you." And with those words, she tried again, this time stronger, her feet pressing firmly into the earth as if the ground itself welcomed her. Dr. Harris could no longer remain still. He dropped to his knees in the grass, his hands covering his face as sobs broke from him, raw and unrestrained. For all the years of failure, of surgeries, of unanswered prayers, seemed to collapse under the miracle unfolding before him, and when he finally looked up, his daughter was standing only a few feet away from her wheelchair, her arms stretched out toward him, her face shining with tears and joy as she cried, "Dad, I'm walking." And he stumbled forward, catching her in his arms as laughter and sobs mingled in his throat, his world spinning with disbelief and gratitude. The onlookers clapped, some wiping tears from their own eyes, while Jordan stood a little apart, his expression calm and strangely distant, as though he was not surprised by any of this, as though he had always known it would happen. Dr. Harris held Lily tightly, whispering over and over, "I'm proud of you, I'm proud of you," his voice breaking with every word, and when he finally looked up at Jordan, their eyes met, and he asked in a trembling voice, "How did you know? Cuckoo, are you?" But Jordan only smiled faintly and shook his head, saying, "I'm just someone who believes," before turning his gaze back to Lily, who now sat again in her chair, exhausted but radiant, her cheeks flushed with triumph as she looked at her father and whispered, "He made me believe, Dad, that's all it took." And Dr. Harris felt those words carve themselves into his heart, because he realized she was right, that sometimes the greatest medicine was not science but faith, the courage to believe in what seemed impossible. As the sun sank lower in the sky, painting the park in shades of gold, Jordan stood quietly, his silhouette glowing in the light, and Dr. Harris, still overwhelmed, wanted to thank him, to ask him to stay, to become part of their lives. But when he turned after helping Lily settle, Jordan was already walking away across the grass, his figure growing smaller until he disappeared beyond the trees, leaving behind only the echo of his words and the miracle he had given them. Dr. Harris wrapped his arm around Lily, his tears falling onto her hair as he whispered, "You will walk again, my brave girl, I know you will," and for the first time in his life, he did not feel like a surgeon who had failed, but a father, whose daughter had been given the greatest gift a chance to believe in herself. And as they sat together under the oak tree, their hearts full, he realized that their lives had changed forever, not because of medicine, but because a boy who had nothing chose to give them everything.